Well, we live in the age of oil. It powers our cars, heats our homes, even puts food on our tables. But some believe the age of oil, or at least cheap oil, is almost over. It's a theory called peak oil, and if it holds true, our society could face dire consequences in the coming decades. As Steve Fisher reports, one Ottawa civil servant has made it his mission to get the word out.
As Paul Chefurka heads out for the evening, he has a clear vision of the future out his frost-covered windows. A future when homes sit unheated through an Ottawa winter, when food is scarce, and the streets empty.
When I discovered this had the potential to be as significant or more significant than global warming, I felt that I had to get it out in the public attention.
This night, Chefurka will share his vision at a talk in Ottawa.
I'm going to describe tonight what I think is the most serious short-term threat that humanity faces.
It's called peak oil, the theory that the world's oil supply will one day reach its peak of production and head into irreversible decline. The theory has been around for decades, but those who support it say that peak oil is now just around the corner. The theory is based on the fact that there's a finite supply of crude oil, both in the individual fields where it's being pumped and for the planet as a whole. That oil gets harder and more expensive to extract as the fields are depleted. At the same time, our collective appetite for oil is insatiable. Each day, the world consumes 84 million barrels.
The oil age, when you consider it historically, is very, very short. It started 100 years ago. We're through half the oil. And whether the peak happens next year, whether it happened last year, we've built a civilization that is utterly dependent on a resource that's going to go away in under 100 years.
Oil industry analysts agree world production will one day start to decline, but argue that's still a long way off, and by then we'll be ready.
With more fuel-efficient cars, perhaps the trend towards smaller cars, all of these, from the demand point of view, are going to likely reduce the rate of crude oil consumption. That, along with new discoveries of crude oil reserves and newer, more efficient ways of extracting those resources from the earth, are going to be additional factors that will likely continue to push that peak oil date further and further into the future.
Chefurka is a computer scientist employed by the federal government and a member of the Ottawa Peak Oil Association. He became involved after discovering a growing number of research papers predicting an imminent decline in oil production on the internet.
Typically, they're retired geologists, retired petrochemical engineers, people who've had a lot of exposure over their working lives to the issues of oil fields and oil production. 2/3 of the world's oil-producing countries are already in decline.
Chefurka argues the warning signs are there, and when we pass that point of no return, watch out.
Here's the situation. Oil prices have risen through the roof. $150, $200 a barrel. Airline and trucking companies are going to start to go bankrupt. People are going to start fleeing the suburbs in droves. Food costs start to rise. You're going to start to see famines creeping in at the edges. You'll see resource wars becoming more common. Depressed yet?
Oil industry analysts say talk like that is irresponsible.
To pursue policies that are based on an assumption of rapidly declining resources, for example, could lead to policy decisions that would really cost a society far more than it really has to.
With prices at the pump still relatively low, motorists don't seem too concerned.
I think we'll find a way to solve the problem soon after, if not just before it becomes an issue.
I don't think it'll ever happen. And I'm sure they have a contingency plan.
But no one's come up with an alternative yet, or at least not one that can meet the world's craving for an abundant supply of cheap energy.
And it's going to be slow at first. You'll hardly even notice it.
Chefurka says the only hope is an unparalleled conservation effort, And that would require a drastic change in lifestyle for the entire planet. This night, he gained a few converts.
I'll certainly consider ways that I can reduce my dependence on it personally.
I'm more concerned about the fact that I have 2 children and I have 2 granddaughters, and what their life will be for them.
It was a small turnout, but Chefurka is far from discouraged.
As soon as it penetrates more into the public consciousness, it's going to start to pick up, and more people will be looking for information. When they are, I'll be here.
On the way home, Chefurka's car needs a fill-up of biodiesel, no fossil fuels for him. It's one way he's preparing for a world after peak oil, a day when these prices may look like a bargain. Steve Fisher, CBC News, Ottawa.
And today, prices for crude oil edged a little higher after the U.S. government said gasoline inventories had dropped for the 6th straight week. Now, with